So a bit of a departure from my usual BattleTech videos here, but just a real quick. With my recent video ripping apart the atrocious understanding of jump ships and the Dobrev in the HBS BattleTech game videos I've been making, I feel like I should talk a little bit about the jump ship in general and the KF drive as they're described and used in the universe, just to prove that I'm not pulling all that ranting out of my ass with nothing to back up what I'm annoyed about. I'll be quoting several passages from Sarna.net in this one, which is basically the semi-official BattleTech wiki. Makes great effort to focus on what's canon and emphasize for readers what is not canon. So I'll quote some bits directly since they're all but officially the word on canon within the greater BattleTech community. Jumped Jump ships are, within the BattleTech universe, the only method of interstellar travel. They use the KF, or Kearney-Fuchida drive, which I'll explain in a bit here, to warp space and jump more or less instantaneously between star systems. Most are equipped to carry numerous dropships and shuttles to piggyback them along the way, kind of like an interstellar tugboat, along with the jump to move personnel, freight, and military equipment around the inhabited worlds of humanity, be they inner sphere, periphery, or the clans. Everyone relies on jump ships, and they are the only method of interstellar travel in universe within the BattleTech game. Uh, Technology to begin with, to cover the technology of how it works. I'll make my first full quote from Sarna. They cover it as briefly and succinctly as I could, and when I tried to paraphrase this without losing pertinent info, all it really was me shuffling the words around. So here goes, quoting directly from Sarna. The driving force behind the initial colonization of the inner sphere, the Kearney-Fuchida, or KF drive, was named after the two professors, Thomas Kearney and Takayoshi Fuchida, who theorized on the ability to warp space to allow for quick travel over more than 24 light years. Put forward their theories beginning in 2018 within the BattleTech universe, not in real life. Their theories were ridiculed for decades. It was only after their deaths that they were vindicated when the Deimos project jumped the first jump ship from Sol's zenith jump point to the nadir jump point in 2107, meaning they instantaneously went from the gravity well at the quote-unquote bottom of the sun to the top of the sun, just to show that theoretically it was possible. A year later, the TAS Pathfinder made the first manned interstellar jump to Tau Ceti, where they confirmed the findings of the slower-than-light Magellan probes. Tau Ceti had a habitable planet, later named New Earth. The creation of the KF drive was the only reason that extensive colonization of the inner sphere took place or was even possible. A KF drive is comprised of a meters-thick core made of a titanium-germanium alloy wrapped in a liquid helium jacket, computer controller, initiator, tankage, and all the other associated equipment. The core acts as a capacitor to store the energy needed to burst through space. Replacement cores cannot be transported as typical cargo transiting through hyperspace. There are two ways to deliver a core to a different star system. The first is the most common when the appropriate transport assets are available. Once constructed or removed from the previous hull, the core is attached to a complete drive and installed within a lightweight transport shell. Another jump ship would then temporarily attach itself in order to provide the necessary charge and to program the jump through hyperspace. After the charging ship has removed itself to a safe distance, the shell would jump to the target location. The second method would have the titanium germanium core ground into gravel-sized particles and usually chemical treated to reduce the interference with a functional KF drive. It would then be reprocessed in a zero-G facility and recast into a new core, a process requiring many months. The science behind the KF drive was lost in the course of the succession wars, except by Comstar, who concealed the knowledge. While new drives can still be made, this is done by simply repeating the known design without variation. This also means that new jump ship designs cannot be created except by trial and error, a process that would be so ludicrously expensive in the case of even one failure that the closest anyone has come is making modest changes to non-jump related systems such as changing armament and external accoutrements of ships. Comstar had secretly produced a few new designs, most notably the Magellan-class Explorer jump ship equipped with an HPG for use in scouting new systems and searching for Alexander Kerensky's lost fleet. Following the discovery of the Helm memory core, this science has begun to recover and new designs have begun to be produced. The clans retained more of this information, fielding several unique designs and even maintaining a warship fleet, though how much they know is a closely guarded secret. End quote. So, as stated, basically the KF drive is the driving force behind interstellar travel and expansion. Without it, humanity would be stuck on Earth, and no new method of travel has been developed a millennia later. They are fragile, essential, and almost irreplaceable within the universe. Within the confines of the established tech rules in BattleTech, jump ships recharge through massive solar sails at least a kilometer wide, which collect solar energy to recharge the batteries for the drive. If you have trouble picturing that need or that technological design, picture a World War I or World War II submarine that needed to run on the surface under diesel engines to recharge its batteries to then be able to run underwater. Same basic idea, just a different system of doing it. Depending on the size of the batteries to be charged and the strength of the star, this can take between 6 and 9 days, severely limiting the speed of travel across vast distances. This can be somewhat sped up using fusion reactors and things like that to dump a little more power into the batteries. But in most cases, with what's available, it usually only charges it up a few hours to maybe a day or two faster. So you might be able to cut it down to, say, 3 days. The way it always goes in the HBS Battletech game, you always sit at a station for 3 days and then jump out. In reality, you should be sitting there for a week before you jump out. Once the drive is fully charged, and after numerous warning klaxons over an interval of about 10 minutes to give everyone time to prepare for the jump, basically to brace yourself for the massive forces that are going to be unleashed, the drive releases its stored energy and, with the assistance of massive computing power, makes a jump to a station, usually, as already mentioned, the zenith or nadir point of a star where the gravity is predictable, to another star within a distance of approximately 30 light years, maximum 30 light years. You can go less. This jump is perceived as an instantaneous transaction by humans making the jump, but does take a brief amount of time dependent on the size and payload of the jump ship. The best example given on Sarna is that the massive Potemkin class, with its full payload of 25 dropships attached, think about that, you usually see 2 or 3 attached to the ones in the HBS game, would take a total of 375 seconds, or about 6.5 minutes, to fully complete the transit, from releasing the charge to emerging in system 30 light years away. Once arriving and determining that all is well systematically and mechanically and there is no threat to the ship, the sail is deployed, and the process begins again. I won't get into the nuances of jumping out of and emerging into a system, as that would cover a little scientific and technological nuance that I don't want to get into. You can look it up on Sarna to see examples of how it can go wrong, as well as it would take quite a while for me to really get into it. Suffice it to say, the process is not foolproof or simple. A lot needs to be taken into account at both ends of the jump to assure a safe departure and arrival. Limitations. So now we get into my issue with how jump ships, and specifically the Dobrev, are handled in the HPS game, although from what I've already said, some of that should be apparent. Again, for simplicity's sake, I will directly quote a passage from Sarna. Quote, designed exclusively to provide FTL jump capacity, jump ships typically feature only the essential components required for jumping. The delicate KF drive dictates the typical needle-like appearance of a jump ship's fuselage, together with a trademark jump sail that is required to safely recharge the KF drive with solar energy and accounts for 95% of its total mass. Most, but not all, have hardpoints with KF field conducting booms that extend the jump field to include docked dropships. Jump ships are not meant to move away from jump points and have no transit drives, only a weak station-keeping drive and maneuvering thrusters to maintain their position in orbit of the star. Other than that, they provide crew quarters and a bridge. Other common features include gravity decks, hydroponic gardens, extra cargo space, or hangars for small craft. Unquote. So right there, you see my issue with the Dobrev. A jump ship does not because it cannot travel in system. And there is absolutely no way a dropship can land on a planet. It is not designed to handle the stresses and heat of reentry. And even if by some freakish miracle it did, there is no way in hell it would ever be able to lift off again. No jump ship is designed to land on or lift off from any celestial body of any kind. They serve their entire existence from construction to destruction or disassembly, existence floating at a zenith or nadir point of a star or jumping between them. And yet, within the HBS game, the Dobrev seemingly lands and lifts off from a planet at least 3 times before the end of the campaign. Even in the 31st century, no one builds ships with this capability, including Comstar and the clans with their vastly superior technology and production capabilities. So to even try and wave it off as an old ship from a more advanced era with a lost capability is idiotic. The Dobrev, by any criteria you use in universe, is simply completely incapable of doing anything that they say it does in game. Even taking out the whole Kerensky Exodus angle and the apparent teasing of the clans 25 years before they return to the Inner Sphere by making repeated references to what is obviously intended to be Clan Wolverine, the entire Dobrev story arc is completely ridiculous and utterly impossible within the confines and limits of the universe it is set in.